So when we think about the assessment after we've gotten the pens, you can't write a post-secondary goal if you haven't done an assessment. And a lot of people tell me they do interviews and then they say, but the student can't tell me what they want to do. The student can't say, they say, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So that's why I believe you have to do some informal and you have to do formal. You've got to be able to have a way to get some information from a student about where they're going. So to write that measurable post-secondary goal in the area of, that's hard to read, education, training, employment, and independent living skills is necessary. So there's been a whole controversy, especially since Synergy came out. We used to have education/training, and the guidance is that you have to consider all 4 of these areas. They need to have a goal written in education or training or both, and then they need to have one in employment. Independent living skills are just if necessary. So remembering you're going to have at least 2, or you may even have 3, because your education could involve some kind of training, or your training that you're going to take involves employment, but education training leads to employment. So you're going to write, at least 2 of those goals. Okay, so your post-secondary goals should come directly from your assessments. You have to always consider education and training and employment. But you're going to also include an independent living goal, or if that's needed. Okay? Common mistakes are they're not measurable. Oftentimes the post-secondary goal says student plans to, student wants to, student's interested, student will explore. You need to have the goal be clear, and it needs to be after high school. There are still schools out there that don't believe that that goal is for after high school. It's not anything that happens during school, it happens after high school. And oftentimes you're missing an employment goal or an education goal or the training goal. You're not getting the 3 that you really are looking at. So let's look at Allison's goal.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
I think also the fact that that is for after high school, and the emphasis that's going into some changes in the IEP form as well as the standards-based IEPs, that those goals are supporting the post-secondary goals, and that also creates that clarity around the differences. So.
And that's why you're looking at that assessment and writing that post-secondary goal, because everything after that you're going to chain backwards.
Yep.
You're going backwards to make that plan. So education goal, which one works? Which one would you say would work? Which one could you answer that's measurable?
1.
Why?
2 says plans to.
Okay. Plans to. So I always told my staff, just a rule of thumb in their brain, if they could answer yes or no to it, you're getting close to that post-secondary goal. Because if it plans to, can I say, well, maybe they did or maybe they didn't, or I don't know.
I think another trend that I've seen a lot is that they combine multiple goals in one, where they talk about that and will live on campus as part of the education goal.
And,
are we supporting that, or are we not supporting that?
I think that if it talks about employment, it talks about training, or it talks about education, and they've done it all in one goal, you've covered what you need to cover. I mean, it's better to separate them out, and Synergy's making you separate them out. It's 4 individual areas.
I think at some point people were told you can't separate them out.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I remember being told you write one post-secondary goal that's supposed to hit all those things. So it's kind of ingrained in us that you're supposed to do that. And I think it was kind of this light bulb of when I finally realized I didn't have to do that. People like it better. I think that you can separate them, but
yeah,
as long as you hit the areas.
But if you're going to school to be a phlebotomist, you may have your education training goal all in one, because you're going to go to classes and learn things, but you're also going to have a training program to be able to draw blood. So, I mean, those 2 things could be involved in the same goal. And what we've given guidance around Synergy is that if you don't have training, you at least have had to consider that. So write a statement in there that says, team considered this, and at this time there'll be no training involved. I mean, at least make some kind of statement in that don't leave it blank.
So Sally,
Yes?
I always thought the transition goals or something like, for post-secondary, like the ones that, but number one is for 4 years. So they can write goals up to like 4 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out, or?
Post-secondary goal does not happen in high school, Sam.
Right.
She's talking the
So,
direct year after.
we have
He's treating it as a one-year
Yeah.
timeline versus.
Well, but it's telling you, I mean, that's Allison's goal. She's gonna go 4 years to college. Somebody else's might be that they're just gonna work in a grocery store. And, they're, 2 months after graduation, Sam will work in Uncle John's grocery store as a, what do you call those people? Cart boys.
But I think the important thing in
Courtesy
this one,
clerk.
Sam, is that it's talking about getting that
That's her
that specific
education.
degree.
Yeah.
Right.
But I get
So-
your question, somewhere along the lines, because we've seen this, is teachers were told or are being told
Right.
it has to be within that 1 year after graduation. And so, like, I've been to some schools where they say, well, I can't write about that goal because that occurs 2 years after graduation. I have to have it within this 1 year. And it's always this conversation of, who told you that? I don't know if district policies are saying something like that. Rhiannon and I talked about this a while
We
ago.
were
but
trying to
trying
find
to figure out where
what
that came
underlies
from.
that. Where did it come from? Is it because the IEP is done annually? Is it because there was the survey that followed up 1 year later? But is there
Yeah.
is there
But it just
regulations
says
written?
post after high school, so it doesn't seem,
Yeah.
we could not find a reason why somebody would think it has to be within 1 year.
But you know what, I think some of our examples have always been 1 year after graduation. 1 year after graduation, so I think that starts to be ingrained in people's brain where we're only talking 1 year after graduation, when that's just an example of how you could write it.
And an example, so I was in a district and I was talking to this teacher and he was, we were talking about post-secondary goals and his goal was around, this student is going to be, when this student graduates high school, she just wanted to work. She just wanted to go get kind of an entry-level job for a while. And then as we were talking, he said, well, her plan is she wants to be a nurse someday. Like, she really wants to go into nursing, but she doesn't want to do it right away. She just wants to get a job. And so we talked about, okay, what does your transition plan look like then? What kind of courses could support, and he said, but I can't write about that because she doesn't want to do it right away. That's ultimately her long-term goal, but she just wants to work for a year, get some money to save up for school. And so it was this conversation of, does it have to be within that year or, So, and we talked about it's really hard to do a transition plan for one thing when you know the student's goal really is another. So.
Alrighty, we ready to
Was
move
it
on?
fun?
What a
Sorry.
great discussion.
We're
Great
engaged.
ideas. So, we've done the assessment, we found out the pins, we've written a post-secondary goal, we've now are going to identify some transition services. So the transition services would be in the areas of specially designed instruction. Maybe that student needs some extra time on beefing up their math or their reading if they're going to go off to college. Related services, they may have an Alcom device that they use. There may be things like that that would be listed. Community experience, they may not ever going to drive a car, so they may have to have some mobile training to be able to get around to their community. And employment and living skills. It can be written around job skills that they need to acquire, or it could be written around their daily living skills. So they're coordinated. They need to be, all the things need to start and there needs to be aligned together. That you're looking at it movement from school to out of school. And it needs to be that through line. It needs to be based on their preference, interests, needs, and strengths. And if people don't talk to students or they aren't a part of IEP meetings, oftentimes the preference interest is left out. And it can be through specially designed instruction. Some people will call and say, there's nothing on this IEP, but it has specially designed instruction and extra reading to boost their reading level. That can be part of their transition plan, because if their transition plan is to go off to college, they need to have their reading levels in a certain place. So, examples, instructional support of estimating time needed to complete tasks. So they may need extra time. Instruction in transition or transportation and mobility. Learn about places to visit in the community. Know your banking, know your shopping, know your entertainment places. You could have some job shadowing or internships going on out in that community that the student's been involved in. And then their communication skills is huge, because that's the piece that a lot of employers say that students fall in that area. So being able to be a part of that group that they're working with and their social skills. Okay. So transition services, and then you're going to write a course of study. Course of study is your multi-year, go ahead. It's the multi-year description of coursework and its activities that the student could be involved in. So when we think back to, people think coursework, high school courses, you want to think about, you know, if you make a comment about somebody wanting to go into a culinary program, but my school no longer has culinary classes because that's been cut out of our budget. We need to think, we need to know as case managers or teachers writing IEPs, we need to know our curriculum. We need to know what happens in our classes that my student that wants to be in a culinary program can get those skills from a certain class. So we had a science class that talked about cooking in it. So that might be a class that I might list on here, because there are pieces that they could take away from that science class to use with their post-secondary goal of culinary. There may be things, someone that's going to work out in the woods and need to be strong and active, you might want to list PE classes or weight training classes or something like that, because what you're doing is you're working towards that post-secondary goal, and it's a part of that list. It is not a list that says we'll take all the classes to graduate from high school. It is not a list that says we'll take the classes to get a modified or a standard diploma. It's not a statement. It has an actual purpose that you've looked at those classes, you understand that curriculum is going to help me acquire those, help that student acquire those skills to reach that post-secondary goal. It can be a statement, it can be a list, it can be, I mean, some people do a narrative, it doesn't matter how it is, just as long as it's a multi-year description of classes and activities that that student's going to be involved in.
So if it's a freshman, you would want to know the rest of the freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and potentially senior year, potential classes that or activities that they could be doing through that time
If that
period.
freshman's 16, yes, I would write that. But most freshmen are 14, 15, so you're usually not writing, sometimes you're writing in 10th grade, 11th, 12th, but most of the time it's 11th, 12th.
But you want it to clearly be, you have them put those, so you know that it's for the remainder of their high school career.
Yeah, and that's actually looked at and changed yearly, because it's not something that is set in stone, because that's when people say,
And the nice thing is it's called projected
Yeah.
course of study.
Yeah.
I always say that, because then you get the questions of like, well, these classes are canceled, there's
Yeah.
not enough students signed up, or, you know, so it's called the projected course of study for a reason.
Yeah. It's called, you're designing a plan to say, I'm going to pick up these skills, acquire these skills for that post-secondary goal. So in this students, if we look at their post-secondary goal, upon completion of high school, Linda will enroll in classes at Lane Community College to become employed as a personal and home care aide. So she's going to need her English to acquire skills for community college classes. She's going to need Algebra 1 because she needs that to get into school. Biology, if she's going to be in personal and home care, there's probably some things that she would acquire out of that biology class. Mental health is important because, again, she wants to be a personal home care aide, and then to do first aid. Sometimes you'll see on there, oh, there is a driver's ed course on there. So oftentimes, and I got pushback from like Clackamas where they said, we aren't going to list driver's ed because then that means we have to pay for it. But if it's a skill that that student needs, this says activities or courses. So oftentimes our conversation was, in my experience, was around who's going to be responsible for that. And parents would say, we'll take over that driver's ed piece and we'll make sure that they get their permit and get their driver's ed. But they still needed it. And if they couldn't access it, what is it that we needed to do to help them access that? Because they need to gain those skills.